Join us as we share our experiences, strength, and hope. When the world says, give up, hope whispers, try it one more time.
What's going on, Mile High? And welcome back to Sharing Our Stories. My name is Slim, along with Nani Al-Jalil from Tribe Recovery Homes, and our guest, Lelan Harry from Missouri. And if this is your first time checking in with us, well, welcome to Sharing Our Stories. This program is about addiction and recovery. Everybody in this room has dealt with addiction to drugs and or alcohol, and we are in our recovery, and we want to share with people that recovery happens and that, yes, you can recover. Oh, that's okay, down the hall. Little noise going on here in the background, Mile High, okay? And we just want to let you know that, yes, you can recover too. So thank you for being here, for sharing our stories and checking in with us. And welcome. Nani, good to see you. We were off last week for Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So I haven't seen you in a bit, but you and Tribe Recovery Homes, y'all did something amazing on Thanksgiving Day.
We did.
And I seen the pictures, but now you got to tell me about it.
Yeah, we had a great day on Thanksgiving. So we did a big celebration with the participants of our community. Had a great Thanksgiving dinner with our whole Tribe family. So it was a great day for us.
Now, when you say participants of our community,
yeah.
Now who are we talking about?
So of our homes, the
Okay.
participants of our homes. A lot of our participants either wanted to spend Thanksgiving Day with all of us, or some of our participants don't always
They don't have
family.
family and
Yep.
people to share it with.
Yeah, they don't always have family or people that they can share it with. So we.
So how
got
many
to spend
people
the
do you
day
think you guys
together.
all got together?
I want to say there was probably 40 of us.
That's a lot
that got
of
to
love.
spend the day together. Yeah.
That is super cool.
Yes.
And now you gave out turkeys too, right?
Yeah. The weekends before, we gave out about 1,000 meals.
So
to the
now that's
community.
okay. Now that's what I was really wondering about. You guys did an event for the homeless.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a Thanksgiving Day. That was the tribe's 4th annual Thanksgiving Day turkey dinner
It
giveaway.
was the 4th, and over
Yeah.
1,000 turkey dinners.
1,000 turkey dinners were given away.
I know that Tomas had told me before, he was like, how are we going to get, for the location that you're at, you had to tell people on the other parts of town to come on down.
We did a lot of canvassing.
Yeah, and
we were out there.
And people all came
we
on
were
out.
out there. We were canvassing. People came out. We also, for those who couldn't make it to us,
You delivered?
our participants. So those who live in the homes went out in the vans and went out to folks who were living in tents out there. A couple of areas that were a little bit further out, they brought meals out to the community as well.
So you had two big, fun Thanksgiving events,
Yeah,
two
we've
things
had
to just
some
fill you up.
Busy,
Yeah.
yeah, we've had some busy weekends, but yeah, it's been beautiful. So
That's why you're glowing. It's all that goodness. Come on. We got to spread positivity and love. And so, that's what I'm all about. Excuse me for the cold that I have and sounding so congested. I apologize. I probably should have, stayed home to get even better. But I couldn't miss doing this with all of you, especially after being gone last week. Nani, thank you for what you guys do.
Thank you.
At Tribe. Mile High, we'll tell you more about Tribe Recovery Homes if you've never heard about them before the program wraps up. But right now, it is time to turn our attention to Lelan Harry, our guest.
Oh yeah.
Lelan Harry from Missouri,
Watch out.
who works for another amazing organization here in Denver, Colorado called Advocates for Recovery. And when I first got into my recovery, one of the first people I met was somebody who he works with, Tanya Wheeler, she's been on this program long ago. She is amazing. She's just awesomeness. And the people she surrounds herself with are amazing and awesomeness. And so we have one of those people with us today,
Yes.
As soon as I saw that Lelan worked for Advocates for Recovery, I was like, this is going to be awesome.
Yes.
Rock star status, So, Lelan, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get started, how are things at Advocates for Recovery?
Amazing and growing.
Tell everybody what you guys do. For those, it's just a name.
So Advocates for Recovery, it's a free service. So we offer individual, group, peer-led groups, peer recovery coaching. We do group events, but more importantly, we do a community, a recovery community. So we have all kinds of events that are set up over the year, but everything is free. So from our recovery coaching, our family support services, in my recovery, community was the most important thing, period. And when I met Tanya, she was just a force right off the bat. I was like, who is this person? She's amazing. And the way she conducts herself and her language, her vocabulary, it has really made me focus on the stigma attached to certain words. And I carried that into the treatment center as much as I possibly could, but now I get to live it and work it and be a part of it. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. It's like going home every day for work.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's
That is the
fantastic.
best feeling. You love your job.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I never really had a foundation of home. My dad was in the military. We separated ways when I was very young. So my dad is full-blood Cherokee Indian. Most of his family, and himself included, live on the res under tribal land. And my mom is not. My mom is, your typical Caucasian. So when I would go visit my dad on the res as this little bitty fat kid that kind of looked Indian, kind of didn't, I wasn't allowed to participate in a lot of things. I was shunned. The other kids hated me. They'd pick on me, bully me, because I wasn't one of them. And then I'd go back home to my mom and into the white school, and I was the Indian there. So the land that surrounded them was tribal land. So they kind of had a negative outlook against the Native Americans. So no matter where I went, I didn't fit in. I didn't belong. Then Dad left, so didn't have any support. My mom was heavy in her addiction, so she would take off for years at a time and just kind of toss me to aunts, uncles, grandmother, whomever was available. So I didn't have any type of community. I didn't have a family per se. Mom would swoop in every now and then, be there for a couple months, take off. I would go to different schools, and as soon as I would start making friends, we would move. So change and loss is something that I started to deal with at a very young age, and not fitting in. Struggled with that all the way up until high school, and I ended up in Branson, Missouri. That's where I would consider home, even though I was only there for like 3 years and then moved away as soon as I graduated high school. I've been back for some friends' weddings, but it's not a place that, I have roots there. But that was the longest term of my life of living somewhere. So that's where I would consider home.
How many places have you lived?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even count. I'm going to need more Red Bull and a pad of paper. Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, all over the place. We just kind of bounced around.
Okay.
And it would be those times where Mom would come in and swoop me and my brother. We'd go live with her for a little while, and then she'd take us back to grandma's or something like that. So I would go back to a school again, maybe for a semester, and then move on to the next place. So when we finally found a place, and we lived in a tent. Like, I was in high school, and my family lived in a tent at a campground. We didn't have a house. We were very, very, very poor. And the thing that I admired in my friends was their strong family connections. So that followed me throughout my entire life. So when I would start dating people, I would date the ones that had a really strong family connection and kind of latch onto them, like a surrogate family, because I didn't have one. I didn't have anything, and I would use all of that to shove down and have more pity parties inside my head, feeling that, people just didn't understand, that they couldn't relate to me. So I would use that in my addiction, which came a little later. So I had my first kid when I was 18, right out of high school. Went to college for a minute and then came back home to raise a family. And I would maybe drink on the weekends here and there, but I wasn't acting a fool. That didn't happen until the divorce started. And I started working a part-time job at a bar. I found an identity. I found people who appreciated me on that side of the bar and on this side of the bar, because we all connected over something, and I felt like I belonged for the first time. Right after that, I started playing music, And so I was bartending and playing music, and I fit in all over the place. People wanted to be around me.
At this point, you're still having fun.
I'm having too much fun.
This is where everybody thinks it's okay.
I went from being, someone that felt like they didn't belong, didn't have a purpose. Mom didn't want me around. I was bouncing around everywhere. And then all of a sudden, I've got people who want to hang out with me, to do things that, wasn't conducive to anybody's well-being. But I had friends. I had a family. When the holidays came around, I had somewhere to go for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I didn't have that beforehand. So the addiction started with that sense of community. I fit in, I had friends, and when I was drinking and drugging, they were there. So it just kind of was a natural route for me to follow. And again, being a bartender and then playing music, and the music actually started to get a little popular. We were touring. I was going and doing radio shows in places similar to this, not quite as fancy. Didn't have the desk here. But that just fueled like my identity is that I'm doing something right. People want to be around me. People respect me. People, look up to me. And it's because I was drinking and drugging. I was making them feel like they belonged, that they had a purpose. And so, I dove in and I used that, I guess, self-hatred from an early childhood. I would use that as fuel for my addiction. That with everything else, I blame everybody else. Bus driver, guy at the grocery store, everybody was the reason as to why I was stopping at the liquor store calling my plug. But it continued. I kept bartending because it was quick, easy cash. All my dealers were my customers. They were right there, so I didn't have to go anywhere to look for it. And, if I got drunk and fell off stage, that was just part of being in a punk rock band. So it didn't have any, repercussions. It was, kind of cool show. That's awesome. And so I just skated by. I skated by, and I made really good money at one point in time, but I never had anything to show for it because of my addiction.
When you're in that environment, nobody's telling you, "Oh, you need to slow down."
No,
you're at the bar.
No, not at all.
Oh, you're in the punk rock band. You really need to cool down.
Yeah, exactly, right. Or when you're going backstage and playing, the shows kept getting bigger. Made it on a couple labels, and there was more in the green room of anything and everything you wanted. So it was right there. It was to be expected in that lifestyle, and that's what I identified as. I would tell people all the time, I'm a musician, I'm doing this. I'm a bartender whenever I'm in town. And that's how I lived. I lived that I was supposed to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was supposed to be blacked out every day. I thought that that's what you did. Because the people that I used to look up to in their rock and roll bands, that's what they did, So I thought I was doing the right thing. In the back of my head, I knew that my relationship with my kids, I had 3 at this time, had fallen apart. I had joint custody, but I only saw them here and there. They had moved out of state, and that was another reason for me to continue the use instead of trying to do something positive and get them, back in my life. I would use it as an excuse to go out and party, which meant that more popularity, the band was more successful. In the back of my head, I was like, oh, once I start making money and I'm famous, then my kids are going to love me. And that's what I would tell myself all the time. I would get so bad, I would sell my guitars or I'd pawn them, even though I was making good money. I didn't have any money. So I would sell them or pawn them and forget that I had a show the next night. And I'd show up to the Summit or, the Marquee and be like, anybody have a guitar I can use? Because I don't have one right now.
But I'm supposed to perform.
Yeah, exactly. And in my mind, I didn't even think that. I was just like, I need instant cash right now to get my fix. And it went like that for years. I would try to get clean. And when I say try to get clean, I would try to stop using alcohol. I didn't think I had a problem with everything else I was doing. There was a bar that I worked at in Oklahoma that our tip jars at the end of the night, I'd go to collect my money and it'd be full of pills, little nugs, all kinds of stuff in there, and dollar bills. But that's when I just started experimenting. I had no idea beforehand. And then when you start playing with larger bands and in the green room, you know, when I'm seeing other drugs that I've never seen before, and these guys they're on MTV, you know, they're the big deal, and this is what they're doing. I must be doing it too. And I did, but never made it successful. So I would try to get clean, go to detox. I was on Medicaid. I didn't have many options. All you could really do is go to a detox for a couple of days, maybe be lucky to do a 2-week program at West Pines. But generally what would happen is I would catch a case. I would do something stupid. DUIs, fighting, something to where I would end up behind bars opposed to end up in treatment. And it was tough because I had the Medicaid and I would call places and nobody would take it. And I didn't have anything else to do, so I'd just go right across the street or call the plug. Start that self-pity thing again. The resources weren't there. This was years ago, but there was nothing there. And I didn't look hard enough for it either. You know, I'd get that no and be like, well, that just means I need to go back out. So I'd end up in jail. I'd come back, do it again, come back. I might stop drinking for a little while, but I wasn't stopping anything else. In my mind, I would tell people, well, I'm sober, I'm clean, yet I was not by any means. This went on for a long time. And then finally, the turning point basically was I went to my psychiatrist and told him about my anxiety issues. And before I could even finish saying what my ailments were, I was given prescriptions for Xanax. And found out that whenever I mixed that with alcohol, there wasn't a tomorrow. You know, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know anything of what had happened. I found out that I would wake up behind random dumpsters on Colfax. I lived on Colfax, but why behind dumpsters, I don't know. But I could point them out still. Well, yep, woke up there, woke up behind that one. I don't know why. Landmarks. They are, yeah, exactly.
Safe spaces.
Yep, they were apparently. I have no idea. It got bad because I would get a prescription and then I would call my doctor a week later and be like, I'm out. I need more. And they would just refill them. And then I started seeing another doctor that prescribed me Klonopin. And in my mind, these are prescriptions that a doctor is giving me because of my anxiety. And I was upfront with them. I was like, that is why I'm drinking. That's why I'm doing all these other drugs, is the anxiety and depression and everything I have going on in my head. Because to back up a little bit, when I was 15 years old was the first time I tried to commit suicide. And I did that numerous times through my 20s, even in the height of, you know, getting signed to a record label and going on tour and things like that. I had this little bouts of success, but inside it was still turmoil. Exactly. So I would wake up in the hospital. I would have, 72-hour holds a lot of times. I had the turtle jacket on many times. But it was just kind of a pattern that kept going on. I would do well, then I'd get really depressed. I'd break everything down. If I was successful in something, I'd destroy it and then use that as more fuel to use and why I shouldn't be here. So many attempts. When I went to see the doctors, I told them about that I didn't want to drink anymore. I was suicidal. I needed help. That was their way of helping. I had a prescription of Xanax. I had a prescription of Klonopin. And no, I did not take them the way they should. I was eating them by the handfuls. And for about a year, I blacked out every day. I would wake up, my cell phone would be gone. My laptop from work would be gone because I was trying to get out from behind the bar, still working in the bars in a different capacity. But I wasn't behind the bar. So I thought I was doing the right thing. The drink's not in my hand, even though it was, because I was networking with liquor reps and companies. So they were giving us free booze. And so it was in my hand, just in a different capacity. But in my mind, I was doing the right step to get out of there. I was on this medication a doctor was giving me. I wasn't behind the bar, but the suicidal thoughts didn't stop. My August 21st, 2017, I woke up floating in the Platte River downtown, right in front of the REI. My head was on the bank. I was wearing a suit, tie, suspenders even. I looked good. But I was covered in blood, beat up, black eye. No idea how I got there because the night before, I was hosting an event on top of the DeVita building, which is kind of downtown. We were doing a fundraiser. I had a bunch of chefs there, bartenders, all kinds of things to raise money for a children's department in a hospital. And I told my boss that night that I couldn't do it anymore. I was done. I'll do this one event this last time. And that was the last time I had those suicidal thoughts. Standing on the roof of this building, having eaten 2 bottles worth of the Xanax and Klonopin, walking around with my $7.50 of alcohol that was given to me for free, and was just hoping that I would fall off that ledge. Somebody actually pulled me off, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up floating in the river. I have no idea how I got there, how I ended up in the river, how I got all beat up. I woke up, went home, stopped at the liquor store beforehand, of course, but went home, took a shower, and I felt horrible. I couldn't really move. My body was giving out, so I laid in bed, and my buddy was the general manager of this restaurant, bar, venue, / that I was working at. I didn't have a phone because I lost it again. He sent me an email stating that the police had come by the restaurant looking for me. So I sent him an email back and was like, I guess I better go find out what it is. So got up, took a shower. I knew by where I was physically that nothing good could have come about. So wrote my roommate a letter with a check of every penny that I had. I had 2 motorcycles sitting outside, a bunch of guitars. I was like, if you don't see me again, it's yours. Here's the title. Because I had been so out of control. I was in fights on a regular basis. I was blacked out. I didn't know what was going on most of the time. And I just hated everything and everybody. So I was looking for fights. And I knew something bad had happened. So when I was leaving my house, I lived in Park Hill at the time. I had $2 bills. That's it. And I was like, all right, I can get the bus, go to the police station, or I can stop across the street at the liquor store, which I did, and I walked. Even when I was bartending, even when I was playing shows, I used to bounce around on stage and shooters would fall out of my pockets. I was in those environments where I could drink for free. I had a bottle in my hand. I could drink as much as I wanted, but I would still hide it with shooters and run off to the bathroom and do it. So that was kind of like my last, I need to have shooter, plus shaking and not feeling well. I walked down to the gang unit at City Park because I knew there was a police station there. I didn't know it was the gang unit. Walked in and was like, I think you guys are looking for me. Gave them my ID, and they were like, yes, sit down. Cops came around the corner. They never put handcuffs on me. They were very nice. Took me downtown and went through the intake process. They were asking, what I had been using, how much I'd been drinking. I told them everything and the suicidal thoughts. And so they threw me in this little room. There was no blankets, no pillows, no bed. It was just completely empty with a drain in the middle, and would come in and monitor me. The nurse at the time, she would come in and wake me up, check my vitals, and I would ask for aspirin or ibuprofen, something, because going through the alcohol, benzos, and everything else that was in my system. And she would tell me repeatedly that people like me deserve to die. So I never got anything. Wow. Nothing. And it was bad. I thought I was going to die. I mean, everything was coming out of my body. I couldn't move. I couldn't stand up. But I wanted to die. I was done. I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. And I still didn't know what I had done to get there yet. So go in front of the judge a couple days later whenever I'm physically able. And
So they kept you in that room for a couple of days like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No food. She'd give me water every now and then, but I couldn't eat anyway, but never got an Advil, never got anything like that. Which now looking back, I'm kind of glad that happened, because if it would have been an easy detox, something that would have been like all my other criminal experiences, the attorneys would fight and be like, this was just a one-off. He's not this type of person. Which in reality I was. I mean, I kept doing it,
Got you fooled.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd be like, I got to go back and take care of my kids, which I was paying child support. I never let that go. But I was not there with them. Even when they stayed with me, I was hungover. I was under the influence. So I was never there for them. So go in front of the judge, and he hands me with a sentence of 164 years. And I go back into the holding area, and everybody's like, yo, what's up? You're like, I didn't know. Because I hadn't met with the attorney yet, the DA or the, pretender. I hadn't met with him going over my discovery yet. So I didn't even know. I had no idea why I was in there. And went back to my cell, and I prayed to God for the first time, truly. The other times I would pray to God whenever I'm riding dirty and there's a cop behind me, and I'm like, please, please, please don't get me. Please don't get me now. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I promise I'll go to church tomorrow. That type of praying I would do on a daily. But this was a different one. I went in, and I remember laying in my bunk and just saying, thank you. You will take me off the streets. I will never be around another person, because I thought I was going crazy. I couldn't control my thoughts. I didn't know who I was. I even got to the point where I thought I was possessed. And I was scared of myself. And so I was thankful. And then when I did meet with the attorney, his first thing was, they're just going to hit you with everything, because I was on probation for an assault case already. And so they just amplified everything. And he was like, no, they're gonna lower it. They threw everything at you, like, here's all this stuff that couldn't have happened. They just put it in there for you, like resisting arrest. There was no police around. I woke up in the river and walked my happy butt to the police station. So that did come out. But when he said that, I was like, no, I don't. I want to take it right now. I know that if you put me away for that long, I will never hurt another person again. I do not want to be out there. I don't feel safe. I'm worried about the community. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I would black out and wake up wherever every night. So a couple of months later, they dropped it down to 64 years. And then I was ready to sign. I was like, give it to me. Let's do it. I'm done. Let's go. And then the next time I went, they dropped it down to 10. And I signed a 10-year. So
from 164 down to 10.
Yeah.
Somebody's looking out for you.
Somebody. Well, it's great. I'm glad you said that, because I was kind of upset. I was like, 10 years, yeah, I'm going to be old. I'm not going to be that cool person anymore, because I was still living in that lifestyle. I was early 40s, acting like a 20-year-old. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to go out there and act that way. So maybe I won't be using drugs. I don't know. I was upset. I was upset about the 10 years, but I was happy to an extent that I would be gone for a while, and maybe something might change. Maybe I could learn something new. But I hated myself. I hated myself so much that I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror. I had dreads. Like I showered. I was clean, but I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, so I just threw a hat on every day because I hated it. I hated the person that I was. Went to prison, went to my first yard, went to Buny, Lower North. Somebody jumped off the third tier as I was wheeling my stuff in, got locked down. That was my first experience when we walked in. And that's when the oh shit moment kicked in. Like, I don't want to be in here for 10 years or 164 years. Like, I made a mistake. Come get me. And it was weird because before I went in, no matter where I went in the city, any bar, any venue, everybody knew me. I never paid for anything, and got there. Nobody gave a crap who I was. They didn't care who I was. They didn't want to know who I was. They checked my paperwork as soon as I walked in to make sure that I was okay. But they didn't want to have anything to do with me unless I was doing something for them. So I just laid in my bunk. I was depressed, sad. I got super fat, and just didn't want to live. Those suicidal thoughts started coming back in, and I went to a therapist in there, and She told me that I had depression, but it was just situational depression. And I got mad. I was like, what? You don't know me, sucker? Trying to plead my case. And she was just like writing notes like, yeah. You have no idea what you're talking about. Get out of here. I moved to a different facility and tried that process all over again, and the same thing happened. She was just like, yeah, you got situational depression. Like, deal with it. Do something. Get out of your bunk. Go do something. And I'm like, I don't want to get out of my bunk. And it's the thing that changed was I was walking to chow one day, and I saw these guys in there doing yoga. And, people were walking by banging on the windows and stuff, and they were in there. And I remember thinking, look at how peaceful they are. Like, that's amazing. I've never experienced peace like that before. And I used to make fun of yoga all the time. I was the one that would just being a fool. But I hated it. I hated the idea of it. And I would walk by every day to go into chow, and they would have it and be like, damn, I should do that. I should get in there. Like, I want to do it. Finally got up the courage to do it. And it blew me away right off the bat because I had to be comfortable in myself. Like, I had to sit there and breathe in myself, having all these thoughts going around, and be comfortable with it. I couldn't do the poses. I was fat. I couldn't even bend over and tie my boots. I just walked around with my shoelaces dangling everywhere. It was bad. But I found peace. And that ego started to come down. And then I started thinking, well, if I can find peace here, maybe I can find a spirituality. So I would go every single day when I got buzzed out, because I was in a medium facility. So, I couldn't open my door. I had to get buzzed out. I had a wet cell. Anytime that they would buzz it and I could get a pass, I would go to the chaplain's library. And I read every book on every religion, on anything that he had in there. Every single day. I'd go in and get my 5 books, go back, and I would just read and do yoga. And I started teaching yoga there. I got involved in Siddha Yoga, which is like a correspondence class for inmates. And it really opened my mind to all kinds of things. They had a Tibetan monk that would come in a couple times a year. So I would go when he came and listen to him talk. And I read every book in there. Like, the common thing that was in there is they talked about love and being happy and taking care of your brother. There was never anything in any book that was like, they're wrong, we're right, let's fight about it. Nothing. They were all very similar in every aspect. But nobody would take the time to understand that. So that's why they would put those fights up. And people in my own pod would judge me when I'd come in with a book on,
why are you reading that?
Exactly, yeah, and jump all over me. And I'm like, why aren't you? Yeah.
You switch religions every week.
I'm like, how can you say it's wrong if you've never learned anything about it? Like, how can you base any opinion off of something that you've never read? So I did. I absorbed everything. There's some crazy ones out there. There's a lot of good, but again, every single one talks about the same thing, but everyone views it outwardly from a different perspective. So it's all evil. But I started practicing Buddhism and doing the yoga, and I started working out. I could barely bench the bar. I was out there just struggling. But I didn't have that ego getting in the way of like, oh my God, what are these guys going to think? There's lifers in here. Like, they're going to make fun of me because I can't put up 225. I don't have a car. I'm by myself. And then one day somebody came up and he started working with me. I'd seen him around a few times. And when we were working out, he's like, hey, I go to AA. You want to go to AA with me? And I was like, in here? AA? What are you talking about? In here? And he's like, yeah, they buzz you out for an hour. You can get out of your cell for an hour. And I'm like, sign me up. I want to get out of my cell for an hour. I didn't like my cellie. So I was all about it. When I went, I just went my first time to get out of the cell. Mm-hmm. When I had gotten multiple DUIs in the past, I had to go because the judge told me to go. Mm-hmm. I'd go in there and I'd sit and wait for my paper to get signed. I couldn't connect with any of them in there. All their stories they were saying, I was like, that's not me. I'm not that bad. You guys are old anyway. I'm a musician. Get out of here. And so I only went to get out of my cell. And the first one I went in there was a kid. I mean, he was young and he was a lifer, and he was telling his story, and it resonated with me because it was almost my story. A few details were a little different. Like, he came from a wealthy family. I came from, living in tents and trailers that had big holes in it and not having clothes. So a little bit different, but telling his story, and he's breaking down, he's never going to get outside of those razor wires, ever. And mine was just a little bit differently. I never saw my full discovery. I didn't want to see it. I wouldn't look at the laptop. I didn't read it. I had heard a couple people in a blackout fight and nearly killed one of them. So I knew that it was bad. I don't remember anything from that night. The only thing I remember is seeing a bunch of feet, and I don't even know why, but that's the only thing still, after 7 years, that I remember from that night. It could have been me. I could have been a lifer. I could have taken somebody's life. Even though I was full of hatred, it wasn't the people that I was angry at. It was myself. I was angry at myself, and I just took it out on everyone else. I didn't know that at the time. But I started learning that while I was focusing on myself and going within. Man, I was comfortable going within. I loved it. And the ego just kept going away. I didn't have to worry about the guys banging on the windows or making fun of us. And when I would teach it, oh man, I would thug those guys. They'd come in and I'd wreck them. So there was a little bit of ego there still, but it started changing. And I was getting reclassed. So I was going down in custody levels and moving from yard to yard and starting things over again. And I was used to change, from being a kid. Like, change was just part of my life. I never got too comfortable because it was going to change. So I was fine with it. But every yard I would go to, as soon as I got there, I was like, I teach yoga. I taught it at this place. Can I teach it here? And I would get into the AA meetings, because after that first meeting, I was like, these guys are me. They are me. So I started going more and more. And then the same guy was like, there's an NA meeting too. And I was like, what the hell is that? I'm down. Let's go. Hour out.
And you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now it's not just the hour out. Now it's the hour out, and I'm enjoying it.
And I'm enjoying it. And I'm making community, fellowship. And the same thing happened in an NA meeting. Is this dude's telling his story. He's covered in tats. His face is all tatted up. And he's, again, telling everything from like my childhood all the way to that point. And he starts talking about how, like, he thought he was an alcoholic, yet he was doing all this other stuff and didn't feel that he was an addict and all this. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's telling my story. Are you kidding me? Like, I did anything and everything, and it was there every day, but I never thought that I was anything other than an alcoholic. And so I started connecting. I started relating to that. So I was doing those. It's unfortunate because not all of the facilities have both AA and NA. They'll either have one or the other, depending on the outside resources. And so some of them I would go to, there would be NA. Some of them would have AA. There was only 2 that I was at that had both. And they're kind of hit or miss. So I was looking forward to something. I was passionate about it. I was serious about my recovery, and I started working with a sponsor on the outside. We were writing, and I was calling him. He'd put money on my book so I could call him, and we'd work the steps. And I blasted through those steps so fast because in my mind, as soon as I got done, I was cured. Like, I am good. I'm going to get out of this place cured, totally different person. And I manipulated my way through that. I blasted through it. And when we were wrapping up, I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. Like, nothing has changed. I mean, I'm still that manipulative, angry person, just a little less. And so we started doing it again, and I really started taking it serious. And he introduced me to somebody else on the outside that we started working the steps together in a different approach, and it made a big difference. And so I would look forward to, because nobody knew I was in prison. I didn't get letters. I didn't get money put on my books. I didn't get anything from anybody. To be honest with you, people were probably happy that I was gone. So I was in there by myself, and I didn't have outside resources. I didn't get letters. I got my set of yoga. I would get a letter from his church every year, and my sponsors. And so like when my name was on the list, I'm like, oh shit, you know, like I knew what it was and I was excited about it. But I really started working on myself, my recovery in there, making changes. What I started doing right away was, if it made me feel uncomfortable, I knew I should probably do it. So if I didn't want to go to that meeting, I didn't want to go over here and talk to these people, I didn't want to go talk to my case manager, that's what I did in my addiction. Anytime I felt uncomfortable, I didn't want to do it, I'd run away from it. So I changed that mindset. So I would do everything that made me uncomfortable and sit with it, be with it. And I still do that. Still, when I'm like, I've had a long week, I don't want to get, yeah, exactly. That's when I need to go. And so it continued. My last 2 years that I was inside, I was fortunate enough to get on the Swift firefighting crew. So I was a squad leader on that, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot of discipline, connection. I was in such good shape that I would run the PTs every morning. I'd run circles around those 20-year-olds. And it was honestly the meditation and yoga, because I would focus on my breath. I'd get out of my head. I wouldn't feel that, 9-mile runs hurt, because I was not focusing on it. And built this community. We went to a fire in Fort Collins, the Cameron Peak Fire. And when we go to the fires, you go to the IC, the crew bosses get all the information. I, as the squad leader, would be there with them. We'd go back to the crew, relay it. The crew bosses would go kick it. They'd take off, go sit in the buggies, go grab some lunch, and I would lead them up there. So there was no COs. There was no fences. We're carrying axes, picks. We've got weapons in our hands, chainsaws. And most of them are gang members that I'm taking out and about and trying to keep them, out of trouble. Well, some of the other crews found out that we were a prison work crew, because you can't tell. We wear the same clothes, we look the same, and do the same things. And they found out that we were, so they started bringing these guys booze, cigarettes, which found out later that most of my guys were drinking hand sanitizer anyway. And that's a completely different drunk. You don't want to see that. But they started bringing them to us. So there was one day that I took everybody up over this ridge to go check for hot spots where these houses had burnt down, and told everybody to take a break before we got into it. Once we hiked up there, nobody could see us. And they all started breaking out their cigarettes and shooters and having fun, going to town. And a couple gang members pulled me off to the side, and one of them put an axe to my neck and was like, "You're going to drink this, or we're going to think you're a narc and you're going to turn us in." And it was like, I've got more clean time right now in my life. I'm not taking a step back. You're going to have to kill me. And they were like, "We'll handle this when we get back to the facility." So the rest of the fire, I'd go to my tent and I'm thinking, oh shit, first time in my life I want to live. First time in my life, I'm happy. I'm doing something. I'm looking forward to getting out. I've got all these goals and ambitions. And now, because I refuse to drink, these guys are going to come at me. So we get back to the facility, and I remember walking into my room, and as soon as I dropped my bag down, they were in, door closed, one of them out tech, and I was scared. Because normally I wanted to get into fights because, to be honest with you, I was hoping somebody would take me out. I didn't want to at this time, but I turned around and one of them got in my face and said, "We've got mad respect for you for doing that. Proud of you."
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And inside, almost all of my cellies were making hooch. It's easier to find stuff inside, as some of you guys know. It's right there. You might not even have to leave your cell to get it. If so, it's right across the hall. You don't have to wait for your plug. You don't have to do this. It's right there. And when you're not using it is generally when you have those type of targets put on you. But after that, I started working out with the guys. They had a lot of respect for me, and I learned a lot of respect for those guys too, because I instantly was like, oh, these gangbangers, had that negative thought process, when in reality they were struggling with their own addictions too, and they saw that I could do it, and so we talk about it, and they'd start going to AA meetings with me.
And they realized you weren't their narc.
Exactly. Yeah, I was doing my time. Yeah. When I first got there, one of the old timers was like, You do your number. Do your number. Don't worry about all these other fools' numbers. And I still carry that to this day. I used to talk to the participants at the treatment center I worked at when they'd come in and be like, oh, this fool over here. And I'm like, yo, do your number. Like, you're doing you right now. Don't worry about those guys. Still, there's a lot of wisdom that I learned on the inside that I still use today. But I had a very violent case. I had all this against me. I had no plans of getting out when I first saw parole. But COVID hit. And I had done 2 years on a firefighting crew. So my full board had happened overnight. And I was on a fire in Steamboat Springs. And they came and picked me up from there, took me back to the facility, had me pack my stuff, and left. And I was terrified. I was terrified. I paroled to a sober living home. Never heard of a sober living home in my entire life. Someone that I knew on the inside had gotten approval. So
Why were you so terrified?
because I had structure in there. I had structure, accountability, and also on that fire crew, like I was driving cars. I had people that, was reporting to me. Like I had freedom. And Dean Williams had started the normalization in DOC. So I went from making 86 cents a day and wondering, oh man, should I buy a hygiene or a honey bun? Because I love honey buns. I still love honey buns. I had one today. And it was tough, 86 cents a day. And I went from that to getting on the fire crew and making hazard pay. So, I was making like 20, 30 bucks a month, which was still really good money. And then he came in, started that normalization, and I was making minimum wage every hour that I worked. If I was down in the dome doing office work, I was making minimum wage. And then you'd get hazard pay when you go on fires too. So when I left DOC, I had $3,000 on my books. Wow. I went in with nothing. I went in with nothing. When I got out, I had my khakis, my polo shirt, and a JPay card. And it was kind of cool because that church that I had been writing to sent me a care package. So the next day showed up a little phone, gift cards, like razors, all this kind of stuff. And I was terrified. My parole officer dropped me off there and was like, sit in the house until somebody gets here. And I sat on the couch, didn't move for probably 6 hours. I had to go to the bathroom. I was starving and didn't move. And one of the housemates came in and he's like, oh, yo, you're the new guy, huh? And I'm like, yeah. When's the officer going to be here? And they're like, what are you talking? There ain't no officer here. And it was like that step back into reality scared me. I went to King Soopers right after that. He took me down there, and I was terrified. I was walking in there like I should not be here because my life up to that point was monitored. Everything was monitored. And on the fire crew, I got stripped out every single day. I got good at making them feel uncomfortable, because every time we'd leave, we'd have to strip out. So I was watched under a microscope. And not having that, when I went there, I was terrified. I just grabbed a couple of things off the shelf, and I sprinted back to the sober living home. I never knew what a sober living home was, ever. Never heard of that term before. But I'm thankful because it set up structure. So I wasn't just going back to the life that I knew. I was going into something to where I had accountability. We had meetings. We had, things that I had to follow. I couldn't just be a knucklehead and go. And when I got there, the house manager and the people who had been there for a while are like, DOC clients don't make it, man. You're going to be gone in a couple of days. Oh, yeah. And I've always been, and still am to this day, like if somebody tells me I can't do it, oh man, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to do it way better than you would have ever expected.
Sometimes that's negative, but yes. Yes. Sometimes in the worst way, but yeah.
So that kind of fueled me on that too. Is like I had already had this like mindset of wanting to get out and do good for myself and to do the right thing. But when that came down and they were like, yeah, you're not going to be here long. Don't make yourself comfortable. You're going to be gone. I was like, F you guys. Like, I've got this. And so, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning doing my workout, and I'd go look for a job. And I had a job within the first few days. It was manual labor, but I was happy. I was making a living. The Wages program helped me out a tremendous amount. They are fantastic. Love them. But I was a felon, so I would go and apply, and people would turn me down, but I wouldn't let it get in my head. I'd just go to the next place. I was casting that net wide. I went from putting myself on this pedestal in my old life to now being like, hey, I worked in DOC kitchens for the last few years. Like, I don't care. I will scrub toilets. I don't care. I need a job. And I was able to buy a car whenever I got out on my JPay card. Crazy. So I started out, doing well. I put down my deposit in first month's rent with money I made in DOC. And started working at the construction place and going to meetings. I went to a meeting anywhere, everywhere. Didn't matter what meeting it was, CA, CMA. If there was a meeting going on, I was there.
That was one of the first things you did when you got out. You started going to meetings right away.
I wanted to find them. I was like, where's the closest ones? And I would run. I'd ride my bike or, until I got the car. And I would bring my housemates with me. Started chairing meetings. And I talked to somebody that I respect. He actually works for Advocates now. He's their director of training. But he was in the sober living house, and he was working at a treatment center. I'm like, how did you get into that? Like, how did you get your foot in there? Like, I'd love to go volunteer, or just like go in and kick it, like bring him some books, some clothes, like something. And he asked if he could share my number. So he gave it to the housing director at the time. Gentleman called me. We talked for a while, and he offered me a job. And I'm like, hold on, I just got out of prison. You know that, like, I have a very violent case. Like, I've got a 3-year tail. I'm still on it. And he's like, yeah, no, that's fine. When can you start? So I started as a tech at this treatment center. And I was terrified, but I connected with these guys. Like, they'd come into the office and start, laying out their story. And I'm like, I get it. And then tell them part of my story. And they're like, no, BS. What are you talking about? Especially those who had either been in DOC or facing that. I tell them my story, and they wouldn't believe me, so I started carrying around my DOC card. And then I started carrying it around not only for that, but as a reminder that this is where I came from. DOC was hands down the best thing that happened to me, 100%. As I stated earlier, like, if it would have just been another one of those where my attorney was able to go in there and give me probation, community service or whatever, it wouldn't have done anything. I would have went right back to the lifestyle I was doing in that mindset that I had, and it would have just got worse because I kept getting away with it. After all of these charges, I would get away with it. I'd have a slap on the wrist, but never had anything held accountable. Going into that life, like I said, I had seen somebody jump off the 3rd tier. I had a pencil stabbed in my neck. Like, I seen some things, and I'm thankful for every single thing that happened in there because I learned from it. I allowed myself to learn from it. And I used that when I got out. At first, people were bumping into me in the store, and I was like, yo, hold up a second. We need to talk. Like, what are you doing? I had to get used to that. But he shared my number. I started as a tech. I loved it. I absolutely love connecting with them and just being that non-judgmental piece of their journey. When I was going through my detoxes, it was people coming in with a clipboard, and they didn't care. They didn't know. They didn't wake up behind the dumpster on Colfax. I did. Like, they couldn't relate, so I couldn't relate to them. When I was at the house, because this was a residential program, they would come in and kick it with me, and they'd tell me stuff that they wouldn't tell their therapist. And I had a hacky sack with me, so we'd go out and kick the hacky sack in the garage or out in the street, and we would just chat, hang out. And I loved it. I ended up moving up the company, multiple positions. I was a housing director. I moved into their outreach business development position. That's when we met. They have an amazing program too. Big fan of Tribe, especially with my background. And as I was stating earlier too, with that Medicaid piece, the facility that I worked at accepts all raise and Medicaid. So the people who are getting told no everywhere, the ones who don't have shoes, who don't have anything, that was me. And I can say yes. That's all I needed and wanted whenever I was searching. So I was passionate about it. I loved it. They do an amazing thing. Tribe does an amazing thing. To be able to assist those people who the world gave up on, they gave up on me too. So I have a special place in my heart for those programs. We need more like that. Giving out all those turkeys, that's dope. That's awesome. So yeah, I get out, I get into the treatment world. I'm finding that every single meeting I go to, it's the exact same people. Every single meeting you go to, somebody says, welcome home. And it doesn't matter. It's a CA meeting, CMA meeting, HA meeting, every single one of them. I started bringing friends. And I remember a friend of mine who's since passed was an opiate user. And we went to an HA meeting. He's like, oh my God, they're all alcoholics. I'm like, we're all the same, man. But I tried to get my staff to understand that it wasn't just this one way. This isn't the only thing that works. And when you have a participant that comes in, and I'm so glad you use that term, when they come in and they're like, oh, I can't do this because of this. Awesome. Let's go to this. You were a bartender. Have you heard of Chow? Let's go to Chow. And I had the ability to be like, get in the van. We're going. And I would. I'd take them to all kinds of meetings. Recovery Dharma, everything. And allow them to choose themselves instead of saying, you have to go to AA, you have to go to NA, you have to do this. No. And then letting them see at that early phase that it's the same community in every single room. Verbiage is a little different. It's the same basic structure. They might have changed a word or two here. They're saying the same prayer, like same thing. But a lot of us on the outside are thinking, okay, this is my drug of choice. This is the crew I have to go with. But in reality, it's all one big community of people with like-minded experience, like-minded struggles. It doesn't have to all sit in this one area. Tanya always says all the time, treatment happens within four walls. Recovery happens outside of that. How are you going to set yourself up for that success? And from my experience and what she talks about a lot is that community aspect, being around like-minded individuals. That's why it does not matter what kind of event's going on. If there's people who are clean or wanting to be clean or even thinking about it, like I will be there. I'm there all the time. I'm crashing all of those parties. And yes. I wake up and I remember it the next day, but it's every single community wants the same thing. Kind of like what I was talking about the religion too. They all want the love. They all want the same thing. But this is our room. This is the way we say things. This is the way we do things. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be open to everyone. And they should feel comfortable going into all those meetings. It's something that I still do. I have my set meetings that I go to, but there's not an opportunity that goes by if somebody's like, hey, have you ever been to this meeting? Yeah, let's go. Because chances are I've been in every single one of them around here, and I love it. I will go to all of them. I love the Advocates has their all recovery meeting. I'm a core member of Recovery Dharma. That's my jams. But it's all the same thing. It's a community. And so I'm fortunate enough now that you had spoke about earlier that I get to work for this amazing organization that's grassroots, nonprofit. Like there is never anyone that they turn down. Does not matter. And they are there for their best interest. When I was in the treatment industry, there was times that were tough because, again, it's black and white. And I saw a lot of struggles that could have been avoided. And it was tough for me when I have those feelings inside of, no, we could do this, but weren't able to. So I loved being there. I loved catering to those who have the same needs as me. But when Tanya called, whew, I was gone. And I love it. I get to meet amazing people. I get to work for an amazing organization that goes and advocates for change, for changing the verbiage and the stigma attached, and going and learning what happens at the Capitol and seeing how all of this takes place. I didn't get to experience that in the treatment world because I was behind those four walls. Now I'm out in the recovery community learning, absorbing it. I'm a voice. As you can tell, I'll talk. Get me in there. I'll talk.
So great.
So I'm blessed. And it all came from getting rid of that ego and just letting things happen. My way was never the right way. I thought it was, but it got me to where I needed to be. Unfortunate events took place, but then I learned to not try to control everything. Things are going to happen for a while. And I was telling a story earlier that I originally applied for advocates beforehand and got turned down because of my criminal history. And I could have let that beat me up. Mm-hmm. And then when I applied to other organizations for positions that I really wanted and they turned me down for the exact same thing, I could have said F it, Yep. And used that as I'm never going to succeed. I'm never going to be better. But in reality, I want to help other people and I need to help myself because I can't get out of that community or I'm going to go right back to it. So I did the best I could at what I did and doors just opened. And
Persevered. Yeah.
Now, like I get to, like I said earlier, I get to go to work, which I feel like I'm going home. I go kick it at the kitchen table with my family, and then our family comes in and participates. And
you work for the improvement of everybody.
For everyone, exactly. Kind of like the whole all community, that I was talking about earlier. Is that's what we really talk about all the time. Is we support all pathways. We want you to experience what's best for you.
Mm-hmm. There ain't one way to do it.
No, not at all. Not at all. If there's one way to do it, damn. It's a blessing. And then I get to do amazing things like this. Like I've seen some of your episodes. Hassan came into Beauty when I was there and spoke. Him and his wife came in and blew me away. Like he was calling out the gangbangers and talking real. But this guy was talking about going to the Capitol and doing all this. I'm like, how's he doing this stuff? And now I'm kind of doing similar things. They're absolutely amazing. We need more organizations like this who are truly in it for the right reason, who are helping the ones who don't have the financial backing or, the major insurance and can take, 6 months off and still get paid. We're the normal folk. And we get looked over all the time. So I love these organizations. There needs to be a lot more. There needs to be more beds. There needs to be more resources. In time. But I think the peers who have the living experience that can relate, not lived, we're still living, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to be crucial in helping people in their recovery right now. Questions, comments, concerns, jokes, anecdotes?
Well, I think that your recovery is a complete testament to not only recovery works, recovery happens, but that people change. And we always talk about, people change like, I used to be, always high and now I'm sober and, that's a change. And it is. It's the most important change. But you talk about, I was an angry, hateful, violent person. And I've now known you for probably about 90 minutes. I got to talk to you, or maybe a little longer than that. But I've never seen that person, or can I picture that person?
He's right there.
In any
He's right there in that picture. Right there in
that is absolutely him.
That's there he is.
That guy is scary.
Yeah,
That is not the same guy.
No, it's not.
But again, I keep it in there as a reminder.
Put that up on the camera. Let's do a zoomer in or on her.
Yep.
A little zoomer in or on her.
Right.
For the people.
That's scary. Okay, scary. Smile, scary.
Yeah.
It really was.
We do recover.
We do
That's
recover.
The thing.
Exactly.
We do recover.
But I'm not going to hide from my past.
No.
I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it in any way. I have to be accountable for my past. I have to forgive myself. But I can't forget it. I have to build off of it.
You do. You build off of it. Leland, one thing that I really loved about you when I first met you, we went into your office and we were talking about business development stuff and, just how we can work together in our community and all these things. And right in between the two chairs of your office sat your DOC TV.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was it's so great. And we talked about you. I said, why? But why?
Right.
And you said,
sits down and yeah.
That's the thing.
And he
many
said,
people.
because I always need to be reminded about where I come from.
Yeah.
I never want to forget where I came from.
And somebody that's been there sits down and goes, this is probably a safe place for me right now. This is a safe space where I can talk to you about where I am and where I've been.
Yep.
It was rewarding in a sense when people would come in and they might be acting up a little bit in the program because they're stressed out about their internal issues, and they would come in and be like, you don't understand, man, like I just got out of Sterling or whatnot. And I'm like, that's my TV, you know, like that. Let's talk.
I guess you do understand. Oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
And it would
Watch out.
It would flip the dynamics, and then he or she would be willing to discuss what might be at the root of the problems, and then trust me a little bit more. So again, that's when those conversations that they wouldn't have with their therapist would start to happen. And then after being there for a while, you know, when they would come in new, case management and intake would be like, you need to go talk to Lelan. So people would come in and be like, I'm supposed to talk to you. I just got out of prison. I'm like, oh yeah, come on in.
Come on in. It's gonna be a great combo though, for real. About to change your whole way of thinking about this. Well, Lelan, as our time wraps up here, I just want to say thank you so much. Let everybody know website for Advocates for Recovery, phone number.
Yeah. So right now the website for Advocates for Recovery is out of date. So I'm working on that right now.
Hey,
so
that's
if you have
great.
tips or anything, help me. Because it's been a while since I've done that. But advocatesforrecovery.org is the website. We've got Facebook and Instagram as well. If you call that line, anybody can help you. There's people there 7 days a week. There's all kinds of community events. There's game nights. There's art with care, which that's another thing I forgot to mention, Darren. I'm sorry. I am fortunate enough to be a board member on Colorado Artists in Recovery, which is another organization that I'm very passionate about from being a musician.
Colorado Artists in Recovery.
Yeah.
All right.
Our
So,
winter fundraiser
quick
is
question.
Saturday.
last question. Let's say I'm a parent and I'm calling on behalf of my kid, regardless of their age, 15 to 25, who cares? I'm calling on behalf of my parents or my kid. I want to get them help, have no idea what to do, but I'm just calling you guys. What would you guys do as I call and I go, help me for my child?
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the...
Or my family member or my friend or whoever.
Exactly. We do have family support groups that's for the family who it's ran by someone that is absolutely amazing. I went through my training with her a couple of years ago. She lost her son. She is not in recovery herself, but she had been affected and lost her son to his addiction. And so she runs that group from that perspective, and she's absolutely amazing. And again, another free service. So there's options for that as well. The thing that's tough with youth is there's certain limitations on where they can go, who can supervise. So we have resources, you know, like Full Circle, 5280 High School and stuff. The one thing that I have loved about Advocates before I started working there, especially at the treatment center, is that they have so many resources.
That's why I said, 'cause I don't know another organization that has a bigger list of like, I have a random question for you. I need help. Who do I call? Call Advocates for Recovery.
Exactly.
And they will point you. If they are not the person to help you, they're going to give you the phone number of where you need to go and probably who you need to exactly ask for.
That's what would happen when I was at the center. I would have this weird one-off and reach out to them and be like, okay, I've got this, and this. And they're like, yeah, cool. I'll send you a couple numbers. To whereas I would have never known where to go to. And as we talked before, in the business development role, is like you've got to fill in those gaps, resources. It doesn't matter where they're coming from or where they're going. There's somebody out there. There's somebody out there. So if I don't have the resources, I know some people who do. I'll call her.
All right, Mahai, I hate to do this, but we have to wrap up. Our guest today is Lelan Harry from Missouri, works for Advocates for Recovery. Please do check out Advocates for Recovery at advocatesforrecovery.org. Google them and pull up a phone number, give them a call. Nani from Tribe Recovery Homes, if you want to reach out to her, 720-60-TRIBE or triberecoveryhomes.com. And if we can't help you with one of our organizations, we will always assist you in finding someone who will. We're not going to leave you hanging and going, oh, well, we don't do that. Goodbye. That's not how it works. That isn't helping somebody find their recovery in any way. So please reach out to us if you need. Lelan, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Fantastic job, and congratulations on your recovery. Congratulations on your, I don't know if congratulations is the word, but thank you for your changes in life, and I like who you are.
Thank you.
as a
I
person.
like who I am.
I like you. I like you.
We like you
Yeah.
very much.
This is Sharing Our Stories. We want to thank Caring for Denver for their participation in helping not only us, but so many organizations here in the Mile High help people find recovery. We'll see you again, and thank you for being here for Sharing Our Stories with Lelan Harry from Missouri.